and depending on the situation, and also depending on your life stage that you happen to be at the moment. A college student, young adult, married couples. But the reality of our life is that inevitably we come to a point in our journey where we're trying to do the best we can. We're doing what is right. We know that this pleases God, and we are being responsible to what God has entrusted to us. It's not easy, but we are hanging in there, maybe as a student, as a worker, as a husband and wife, as a father and mother, as a member of Lifeway community, whatever your vocational roles that God has given you at this moment in time. We know that deep inside, we may not be perfect, but we are doing the best we can. We're learning to love people that God has put in front of us. Not escaping, not avoiding, not going around, but under the difficult circumstances at times, even in the midst of difficult relationships, we are doing what we know is right, and we're trying to do the best that we can, knowing that this pleases God. And it's not easy. It never is, right? And what happens is that we reach a point where, and I think Alex kind of alluded to, that we feel like we're under a lot of heavy burden. We're not crushed, but it's difficult because you feel like you're enduring alone, and no one really notices what you're actually going through on the inside. Some people may know to a certain extent, but you're basically carrying this deep sense of loneliness. You are doing the right thing, and you are enduring, but then you're enduring alone. And that's where the sense of loneliness comes in. And it happens a lot, to all of us, but especially including those of us who are serving as shepherds, ministry team leaders, elders and deacons, and even if you don't have any of those titles, just your real life, right? You're doing the best you can in school, in the workplace, at home. You have so many things that you're handling at the same time, so many things on your plate, and you're doing the best you can. But there is this lingering sense of loneliness where you're enduring in love alone without much help. You're enduring alone in dealing with this sense of pain and resentment and anger in the process alone. And people really don't know. Not because they don't care, they just don't know. And so you don't really have that much of a help. And so you feel like you're trudging along pretty much by yourself. We sang the last song, right? God is with me. Absolutely. We know that. But in the heat of the moment, we tend to forget because it just feels so alone and lonely. You're just carrying alone by yourself. What does comfort you, though, is that you know that you're doing the right thing. You know there's absolutely no ambivalence there. You know what pleases God. If anything, that's what keeps you going. But you can't shake this real feeling of just being alone and there's no help. And so you feel discouraged. There's a deep inside your heart that just longs for someone to actually notice what is actually going inside you. Not what you project yourself to be, but what is actually going on. If someone actually notices, man, that will just change everything. But maybe sometimes your pride gets in the way. You don't want to insinuate anything. You don't want to, indirectly. You're not doing any of these things to be noticed to begin with. But deep inside, there's a human part of us that just, man, if just someone really actually understands me. It's this one person who actually gets me. That can just give me this surging sense of resurrection and new sense of purpose to persevere and finish the race. And so, yeah, but a lot of times we long for that, but then it just seems so far away. Or too far and few in between. We do have our moments. Some Fridays at house church, sometimes a one-on-one discipleship relationship, sometimes when the guys get together, when the moms get together, whatever the context is, we have those moments in between. But those are so far and few in between. Most of our daily grind, most of our lives are not lived in that sort of moments. But we just continue to carry on, going through the motions at times, doing the best we can intentionally sometimes. But you just try to do the best you can with this lingering sense of being alone and just carrying along, not being noticed. And but you just say to yourself, hey, this is just the way it is. And so you just hang in there. But I believe today's passage tells us God has something better in store than simply for us to trudge along this life and just simply trying to do the best we can, trying to manage our loneliness and sort of living with a secret sense of bitterness and resentment toward others for not noticing us. God has so much better in store for us than that, And so it's actually encouraging when we look at these characters. We've been looking at them and entering into their story and their life the last couple of Sundays. Naomi, Ruth, and Orpah is now out of the picture. One of the daughters-in-law, she stayed in Moab to remarry and have a better life for herself, which is totally logical and makes sense. But to make the long story short, most of you already know the background story, what led up to this. Naomi, mother-in-law, and Ruth, daughter-in-law, after losing everything, Naomi losing her husband and 2 sons, her daughter-in-law, Ruth, also losing her husband, basically losing everything. And then they make their way back, go back to where Naomi's from, to Bethlehem, to Israel. They make a long trip. They come back to Naomi's hometown. Townswomen gather around, and they totally ignore Ruth, who sacrificially dedicated herself for the sake of her mother-in-law, Naomi, forsaking the better life for herself. Hesed love, totally one-directional, sacrificial, doesn't make any sense, unbalanced, unfair love, like God's love. So they get here, goes right to work, right? And we can identify with Ruth because, like we just talked about, she is doing what she knows is right. But no one actually notices what's actually going on in her life. She's a human being too. You and I are human beings also. No matter how strong we may look on the outside, no matter how strong we muster our willpower to convince ourselves that we're actually strong, that we actually are, the truth is that we all need help. Truth is, we all can use someone's unexpected encouragement. All of us can use an undeserved grace and support along the way. And so we're able to identify with Ruth as we continue to persevere. At this point during the year, a lot of us students, you are in the very thick of things, about to finish up your fall semester. A lot of you are under a tremendous pressure, taking on so many credits and internship and working and ministry, friendship, this meeting, that meeting. Young adults, married couples, I don't even have to mention, we have so many things going on every single day, work, family, paying bills, etc., etc. And we just kind of live our lives, just doing the best we can, but does anyone actually notice me? Does somebody actually understand me? If I know that can make the world of difference to me, And that's part of the reason why we come to church on Sunday. Sort of secretly yearning and longing for that. And sometimes our needs are met to a certain extent, and sometimes we just come and go. Well, back to time to make the donuts. Let's go back to school on Monday. Let's go back to work on Monday. And here we go again, right? So Naomi goes back to work, right? Just like go back to school tomorrow, go back to work tomorrow. She goes to work, not only for herself, but the mother-in-law that she loves, right? And so she happens to end up on the field that is owned by Naomi's then husband Elimelech, who died, his relative, right? His name was Boaz, right? And so one day Ruth, this Moabite foreigner, said to Naomi, I'm going to work. And she said, Naomi says, go ahead, dear daughter, right? And so she sets out. She went and started gleaning in a field. We saw this, right? Following in the wake of the harvesters. Eventually, she ended up in the part of the field owned by Boaz, a really older and caring, good man. Her father-in-law, Elimelech's relative, right? So Boaz asked his young servant, who was this woman, right? Who is she? Where did she come from? And the foreman says, why? That's the Moabite girl, this foreigner, the one who came with Naomi from the country of Moab. She asked permission, let me glean, she said, and gather among the sheaves following after your harvesters. And he says, she's been at it steady ever since, from early morning until now, without so much as a break. Then Boaz speaks to Ruth, listen, my daughter. Remember, he's a lot older than she is. My daughter, very affectionate, right? From now on, don't go to any other field to glean. Stay right here in this one. I got you, right? And stay close to my young woman for protection, right? Watch where they are harvesting and just follow them. And don't worry about a thing. I've given orders to my servants not to harass you, discriminate against you. When you get thirsty, feel free to go and drink from the water buckets that the servants have filled. And he also says, remember, if any young men try to do something to you, don't worry about it. Yeah, I got you, right? You're protected. And so Ruth, think about the journey that she took from the moment that her husband died, and then a long journey through the wilderness with her mother-in-law Naomi, and all that cold shoulder that she experienced from townswoman. And she goes to work. She knows that she's a foreigner. She knows that she has to watch out, look over her shoulder. No one really knows who she is, what her needs are. They have no idea her journey. When you feel like that, people see you. Maybe they have known you for just during this semester, or maybe they have known you for a couple of weeks, a couple of months, maybe even a year. But then what they know of you is like this. They know you like this much, right? But your life is not just here. The whole thing encompasses your journey that you took, right? And this whole journey that you took actually deeply influences and defines this period. This is where most people know you and kind of sort of view you as and have determined yourself, hey, this is who you are. And they have no idea the kind of journey that you took. They don't really know you. They think they know you, but they don't really know you. Right? They will come to know who you really are as you continue to develop relationship and you know the history of that person. All the ups and downs, all the joys and tears, all the sorrows, all the brokenness, all the stuff that he or she went through. Behind the scenes, underneath the surface, which now makes better sense. Then you actually begin to understand this person. And so, Ruth, everyone just looks at just her appearance. Oh, this foreign woman, what is she doing here? Does she even belong here? What? She has all these things bottled up. She's a human being. She loves her mother-in-law, Naomi. She worked hard. She knows what what is right. She loves. She will never forsake her mother-in-law. She's a good woman, right? But at the same time, there's this deep yearning. There's a loneliness. She's carrying on. She's enduring in love, alone, without help. And people are actually just kind of giving her a cold shoulder. And it's getting more and more lonely and difficult. And you feel like you're all alone, just like you and I sometimes feel. In school, in the workplace, at home, even in church, right? And so, but then when Boaz comes and he pours out totally unexpected attention and affection and promise of protection, this older, gentle, caring man that she never even expected to encounter, and he didn't expect to encounter her either, right? They happened to be there, remember? But then actually it was God's providence all along. And so they ended up there by God's sovereign providence. And so when she finally encounters this person who actually understands her history, like when you and I, after a long period of yearning and loneliness and undercurrent running of resentment, everything sort of bottled up, just explodes. Your well breaks, and you just feel so overwhelmed because you have finally met someone who gets you, who understands you, who doesn't judge you, who knows your history, who knows your ups and downs, who knows your joys and sorrows, who just tenderly cares for you and just accepts you for who you are right now. And so she breaks, overwhelmed. She throws herself to the ground, touching it with her forehead. And astonished at the extent of his care, she asks, why? Why? I mean, at the same time, I'm sure she's feeling, finally. But at the same time, why? Why would you do this for me? Why would you be so affectionate to me? Who am I to you? Right? It's humbling at the same time. And so, then she falls on her face, bowing to the ground, and says to him, why have I found favor in your eyes, that you should take notice of me, since I'm a foreigner? Right? When we look at how Ruth is relieved, her feelings of relief, we start to look at her feelings through this window that she gives us. You know, she's afraid. And clearly she is aware that she is a foreigner, that she's not one of these people. You know, when you're doing some sort of work, you're busy. You're doing the same thing that everyone else is doing, but you know you don't actually belong there. It could happen in a classroom, in a big lecture hall. It could happen in a cubicle, in the workplace, even in the church building. You are with everyone else, and you're doing the same thing pretty much that everyone else is doing, but then you don't really actually, you don't feel you belong there. You know, that's like the most awkward thing that people can feel. Like, why don't I belong here? You know, I'm doing the same thing. Why am I treated so differently, right? And so, but she says, wow, why do you take notice of me? You know, since I'm a foreigner. She was essentially saying, you have noticed the unnoticed. You have noticed the unnoticed. You know, have you experienced this? When finally somebody unexpectedly comes along and notices you? Right? Right? You noticed me. I thought nobody would notice me. You noticed me. And that's shocking. You know, you're like, why? How? How? Why? Well, wow, thank you. You know, you have noticed the unnoticed. And so when you have been enduring for a while, in your situation, in your loneliness, in your out-of-placeness, awkwardness, enduring, trying to do the right thing, enduring in love, unnoticed, and somebody notices, it can be overwhelming. You've held it in for so long, right? And actually you got so used to it. You've been nursing your wound for so long, it became your friend. It's your new normal. Nobody knows. Until now. Right? Unexpectedly. And so, when this type of unexpected love breaks through for you, when someone really cares and actually notices you, your history, it's just like, you're like blown away. You know? This is what resurrection feels like. You know? Sometimes you feel like you have been living a life of living death, in a way, but then your resurrection occurs, in a way. And so, we realize how important looking is to love. We sometimes associate love with strong feelings and affections, and of course it can accompany true love. But actually love starts with noticing things, paying attention, seeing. Man, I remember when replying back to one of my friends on Facebook. He happens to be an older gentleman, African-American pastor who has gone through so many trials and tribulations in his life. And I remember responding to his lament, his heartbrokenness, his lifelong resentment. And I get it. And I said, hey, Pastor so-and-so, I see you. I see you. And I meant what I said. And, ever since then, he and I started to connect at a deeper level. From a child of God to child of God, to fellow pastor to a pastor. He realized that somebody sees him. Not just make quick judgments about some of the things that he says on the surface. It all sounds bitter and sort of like all sounds like a resentful, unnecessary comments that you would rather avoid. But then you see something deeper going on, and you just simply acknowledge, hey, I see you. I see you. Right? I know where you're coming from. Right? That means everything. Yeah. And I didn't mean to do anything special. I just saw him, so I just told him I see you. That's all I did. But I didn't know the kind of impact that it would actually have on him. But and so learning to love others well, we start to realize it starts with looking. So Ruth asks, why have I found favor in your eyes that you should take notice of me? Boaz uses the same language when he tells Ruth, let your eyes be on the field that they are reaping. In the Old Testament, action often begins with the eyes, actually. Not with your hands, but with your eyes. And so, in Exodus chapter 3, verse 7, when Lord Yahweh, right, God of Israel, expressed his love for Israel, he tells Moses, do you remember what he said? I have surely seen the affliction of my people. God saw them. I see you. I notice you. I see how much you're suffering. And so, learning to pay attention is the first step of entering into someone's life. I mean, it takes time. It doesn't sound everything. But then you first need to enter into someone's heart. It's actually enter into someone's life history. And that starts with just paying attention and seeing and noticing. Right? And so, that is what Ruth has been doing with Naomi. Right? And now, for the first time, someone is doing it with her. Right? You've been giving, and giving. A lot of moms, I don't need to tell you. You give and give and give and give. A lot of us were serving in faithful ways in different parts of different committees and departments of our church. You give, you give, you give. Man, you are handling multiple things, right? You're noticing things, you're caring for other people, but finally, someone does it to you. Wow, thank you, I didn't expect that. Thank you. Wow. And so Boaz has entered into Ruth's world. His path of looking led to his sense of compassion. And then that led to action, which protected Ruth from those who look in order to abuse and take advantage of her. Right? And so Ruth is overwhelmed by Boaz's care for her. She asked the obvious question, why? And then Boaz answers her. All that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me. He heard all this. and how you left your father and mother, everything that was familiar to you, all your sense of security, I mean, in your native land, and you came to a people that you don't even know, this foreign land, this God that you don't even really know, right? So Boaz had heard of Ruth's extraordinary kindness to Naomi and her courage in crossing cultural barriers, leaving everything behind, right? You know the phrase here, you have left your father and mother? Doesn't that sound familiar? Genesis chapter 2, verse 24, right? Telling Adam, right, you shall leave your father and mother and be united to your wife, Eve, and you shall become one. Right? So this Ruth, this woman, has forsaken marriage and everything that would give her security and joy back to her life. She forsook all of that to love well her mother-in-law, Naomi. Beautiful, beautiful story, right? And so that report of her love matches perfectly this young servant foreman's description of her, causing Boaz to be so proud, so delighted, so honored to be in her presence on his field. You know, this guy, this older gentleman, he feels honored to have Ruth working in his field. So he honors her, right? He protects her, blesses her. And so, because Ruth's love just stunned Boaz. Right? And but it is not just her love that Boaz sees. His language reflects something similar, doesn't it? God's call to Abraham in Genesis chapter 12 to leave his parents and come to a land that he did not know, right? Boaz, in other words, he sees a faith in Ruth similar to Abraham's. And so when you are enduring alone, without help, God has a way of sending someone your way who sees you, who notices you, and understands you. It can be someone who's already close to you, or you can encounter this person unexpectedly. But you know the word, it takes one to know one? You guys know that word, right? For example, there's a thief, and he can deceive everyone around him, except another thief. Right? Because thief knows all your trades. It takes one to know one. A thief recognizes another thief. It's a negative example, but positively speaking, yeah, so if you have gone through something similar, you notice that in the other person. So in other words, one of the reasons why young people are encouraged to not to rush into romantic relationships, for example, and actually focus on your walk with God and your own character development is because it takes one to know one. Does that make sense? So if we rush too soon into these relationships because of sense of peer pressure or because you just want to have someone special in your life, not want to be alone and lonely and things like that, you short-circuit the needed process of maturity in your own character, which will enable you to recognize the same quality on the other person. Without that, you really don't recognize in the other person because that's not who you are. Right? So what God does is when we're enduring alone in loneliness and you're just nursing your wound, dying to be noticed and encouraged by somebody, reciprocating what you have been doing all these times, God sees you. God notices you. He understands you. But He's not just up there saying that. He sends you flesh and blood, real person to you. Like God Himself in disguise, right? through a living person. And you are sharing conversation with this person, you're like, this person gets me. Right? You are talking with your housemates, roommates, late into the night, 2, 3 in the morning. You're sharing, you're pouring your heart out. You are sharing what is actually going on in your life. You don't even share these things even at house church. But you're pouring yourself out. And these brothers understands me. Right? And that you are struggling with some deep stuff. But you can't really share this at a house church. But you're having this one-on-one with a fellow sister in Christ, maybe like an older sister figure, and you're in a discipleship relationship, and you're sharing, you're going deep, you're sharing everything, and wow, I feel understood. I feel safe with her. I feel like she notices me. She understands me, right? You know, sometimes I get glimpses of that in my DD group, Dad's D group that I'm part of on Saturday mornings with 4 other dads. Man, we get each other, right? Ajashis get each other. The old guys get each other. But sometimes God sends these people on your way that you encounter sort of unexpectedly. You didn't expect to encounter this person. You don't really know this person that well, just like Ruth and Boaz really don't know each other well yet. But as an instant connection, through conversation, wow, that's what you went through? I thought I was the only one who went through. You went through that? You too? You know when you feel that? You too? You went through this? And so so you know what I went through, right? Yeah, I do, because I went through it. Right? I mean, because I went through years of hardship because of my legal status situation, the whole thing. I totally get people who go through that situation. You know? And so, unexpectedly, God will send your way somebody, sometimes unexpectedly, who gets you, that you can relate to, who actually understands your history, and who notices you. Yeah, because God noticed you. Amen? So it takes one to know one, and God will send you the one who knows you. Okay? And so, after answering Ruth's question, Boaz blesses her, asking God to richly reward her, to bless her whole life. You know, like benediction, like blessing her, right? The Lord repay you for what you have done. You know what? Nobody noticed all that you have done, but there's somebody who noticed everything. Full reward be given you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. Of course, we don't do these things to be rewarded, right? Because serving is a reward in itself, right? We all know that. But God does have a way of encouraging us and comforting us because God has a way of actually rewarding us. Whether it's material needs, relational needs, a lot of times unexpectedly, He does give us reward. Not in a sense that we earned it, we weren't even doing it for that to begin with, but out of His own goodness, He will reward us in different ways. And so, may God reward you. You have come to hide under the protection of the wings of God to take refuge. The image Boaz uses in his blessing is of Ruth hiding under the wings of God, under His protection and comfort, right? If you're from the rural area, you know well the image of the young hiding under the wings of a mother hen. My great-grandmother used to own this huge farmland in the countryside of Korea, Cheonan. And I remember visiting her when I was a young boy, and you see a whole bunch of cows, huge gendip field. You smell gendip everywhere, And then you see chickens running all over the place. And then these adorable chicks, they come under the wings of the mother hen. And if you try to pry one of them away, right? You know what the mother hen does, right? Yeah, at your own peril, right? She's fiercely protective, right? Boaz is saying, that God is going to hold Ruth close, warm, right next to his heart. And God is telling you and me that when you're alone, when you're trudging along and lonely and in deep need of encouragement and sense of hope and resurrection, he will come in a disguised form of someone else who gets you, who notices you, who understands you, who relates to you, who you relate to. And then you will feel God's personal warmth. Because through that person, you will feel this close and warmth of God's presence. And he's holding you close. Right? God is our refuge. He's our only real refuge when you're enduring alone without help. Right? And so, when you are enduring alone without help, Christ tenderly encourages you, holding you close, right next to his heart, like a mother hen hides and protects her young under her wings. Amen? And he will do this again and again and again. Would you join me in a brief time of prayer as we continue to